The farmer's granddaughter had never walked until he caught the cook doing something amazing. Franklin Miller woke up earlier that March Saturday, as he always did since taking over the farm in Kansas alone. His morning routine included checking on the animals and giving the house a once-over before everyone woke up. As he quietly approached the kitchen, he heard laughter he hadn't heard in a long time. That's when he saw something that left him completely frozen. Dorothy, the cook he had hired just 3 months earlier, was holding his 5-year-old granddaughter Emily in the air, and the little girl, who had never taken a single step, was moving her tiny legs in midair, giggling in a way he had never seen before. "What are you doing with my granddaughter?" Franklin shouted, startling Dorothy, who quickly lowered the child. His reaction was immediate and furious. Emily had been born with a rare condition affecting her leg muscles, and every doctor they consulted in Wichita had been clear: she would never walk. Seeing the employee playing with his granddaughter like that filled him with outrage. "Mr. Franklin, I can explain," Dorothy began, but he didn't want to hear it. "You're fired. Pack your things and get off my property right now. How dare you play with this child's suffering?" The light in Emily's eyes vanished instantly. Dorothy tried to protest, to explain what she was doing, but Franklin had already stormed out of the kitchen, carrying the girl in his arms. The little one started crying, reaching out toward the cook. "Aunt Dorothy, Aunt Dorothy," Emily sobbed. Franklin ignored his granddaughter's pleas and ordered Margaret, the housekeeper who had worked on the farm for 15 years, to ensure the cook left immediately. Within minutes, Dorothy was walking down the dirt road toward town, her few belongings in a bag. That same night, Emily refused to eat the dinner Margaret had prepared. She cried herself to sleep in her grandpa's arms, leaving him torn between protecting her and wondering if he had been too harsh. "Grandpa, where's Aunt Dorothy?" Emily kept asking. "Is she coming back tomorrow to play with me?" Franklin didn't know how to answer. For 2 years, ever since his wife had passed, he had raised Emily alone. The girl's mother, Jennifer, lived in Washington, D.C. and visited rarely. Her father had disappeared soon after her birth when he learned about her condition. The following Sunday, Jennifer arrived unexpectedly at the farm. Margaret had called her, worried about the girl, who still refused to eat properly. "Dad, what happened here?" Jennifer asked, seeing her daughter listless on the living room sofa. "I fired that irresponsible cook. She was playing dangerous games with Emily." "What kind of games?" Franklin recounted what he had seen, expecting his daughter's approval. Instead, Jennifer stared at him with an expression he couldn't decipher. "Dad," Emily was laughing, "when was the last time you saw her laugh like that?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Jennifer's question echoed in Franklin's mind all night. It was true. He hadn't seen his granddaughter that happy in a long time. But still, those strange exercises couldn't be safe, could they? On Monday, Margaret revealed something that would change everything. "Mr. Franklin, I need to tell you something," the housekeeper said as she prepared breakfast. "For about 3 weeks now, I've seen Dorothy doing these strange exercises with the girl, always when you're out in the pasture." "What do you mean, exercises?" Franklin asked, a mix of anger and curiosity rising in him. "She lays Emily down on the living room floor, bends her little legs in a specific way, moves her feet around. The girl loves it. She gets all happy." Franklin grew even more upset. What was this? Secret exercises? What right did that woman have to experiment on his granddaughter without his permission? "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Well, the girl was so happy, sir. And Dorothy has always been very careful. She has a special way with children." Jennifer, who had overheard the conversation from the living room, walked into the kitchen. "Dad, what if she was really trying to help?" "Help?" "Jennifer, the doctors were clear. Our Emily will never walk. Accepting that is the first step." "But what if the doctors are wrong?" The argument between father and daughter grew heated. Franklin accused Jennifer of giving false hope, while she insisted any attempt was worth it. During the fight, Emily dragged herself across the floor to the kitchen door and sat there, as if waiting for someone who wouldn't return. "Look what you've done," said Jennifer, pointing at her daughter. "She's depressed. For the first time in so long, someone gave her hope, and you took it away." Franklin looked at his granddaughter and felt his heart tighten. The girl who used to smile so easily now spent whole days quiet, staring at nothing. "I'm going to find that Dorothy," Jennifer announced at the end of the week. "You'll do no such thing," her father shot back. "Yes, I will. I need to understand what she was doing with my daughter." Jennifer left the house on Friday morning, determined. She managed to learn from neighbors that Dorothy lived in a modest community near the farm, about 6 miles away. The house was small, with exposed brick, and a yard where chickens pecked freely. Dorothy answered the door with a baby in her arms and a surprised look when she saw Jennifer. "Mrs. Jennifer, how did you find me?" "I need to talk to you about my daughter." Dorothy invited her inside. The house was simple but clean, with old but well-kept furniture. In the living room, Jennifer noticed a photo on the wall. A girl around 10 years old, smiling, clearly walking with some difficulty, but walking. "Is this your daughter?" Jennifer asked. "Yes, my Olivia. She's 10 now." She walks." Dorothy took a deep breath before answering. "She was born with a condition similar to your daughter's. The doctors said the same thing, that she'd never walk. But when she turned 4, I met Mrs. Eleanor, a retired physical therapist who lived here in the community." Jennifer's heart raced. "And she taught exercises for your daughter?" "She taught me exercises to do with her, every day, twice a day, for 3 years. It was so hard. Some days I almost gave up. But look at her now." Just then, a girl walked into the room. It was the same one from the photo, moving slowly with an awkward gait but walking on her own. "Hi, Mom, who's visiting?" Jennifer was moved to see it. Dorothy introduced them and explained that Jennifer was Emily's mother, the girl she'd cared for at the farm. "Oh, Emily," Olivia exclaimed. "Mom talked about her every day, said she's really smart and has a beautiful smile." "That's why I was doing those exercises with her," Dorothy explained to Jennifer. "I recognized the signs because I'd been through it before. I wanted to help. And it really works. It doesn't work for every child, but for some, yes. Mrs. Eleanor always said every case is different, but it's worth trying, isn't it? What's there to lose?" Jennifer spent 2 hours at Dorothy's house listening to stories about the exercises, watching old videos of Olivia taking her first steps at 7, understanding the routine that had changed that family's life. When she returned to the farm, she found her father watching Emily in the yard. The girl played with her dolls, but without her usual enthusiasm. "Dad, you need to see something." Jennifer told him everything she had discovered. Franklin listened in silence, watching his granddaughter playing sadly beside them. "Even if it's true," he finally said, "I can't let them give her false hope. What if it doesn't work? What if she suffers even more? But what if it does work, Dad? What if she can walk again?" "Jennifer, you don't understand. We've already suffered too much because of this. We've learned to live with it. Why stir everything up again?" "Because maybe we didn't have to learn to live with it. Maybe there was always a chance." The argument was interrupted by Margaret, who approached with a worried expression. "Mr. Franklin, the girl hasn't been eating properly for a week. She's losing weight. I think she's getting sick from sadness." Franklin looked at his granddaughter and noticed she really was thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and no spark in her gaze. "Emily, come here, sweetheart." The girl dragged herself over to her grandpa and curled up in his lap. "Do you miss Aunt Dorothy?" Emily nodded, making Franklin's chest tighten. "Grandpa, why did she leave? Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Grandpa just got confused." Jennifer watched the scene in silence. She saw her father, a 62-year-old man who had always been strong and decisive, showing doubt and vulnerability for the first time. That night, after Emily fell asleep, father and daughter talked on the porch under the starry Kansas sky. "Dad, I know you want to protect Emily, but what if we're protecting her from the only chance she has?" Franklin stayed silent for a long time, staring at the stars. "When your mother got sick," he finally said, "I chased every possible treatment, spent so much money, put her through so much pain. feeding hopes that never came true. When she passed, I promised myself I'd never do that again to anyone I love. Jennifer then understood where her father's resistance came from. It wasn't just protection, it was trauma. But Dad, Emily's situation is different. She has her whole life ahead of her, and for the first time, we've seen a real alternative, not just empty medical promises. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? The following Saturday, Jennifer made a decision. Without telling her father, she took Emily to visit Dorothy at her home. The girl's reaction when she saw the old cook again was heartwarming. "Aunt Dorothy," Emily cried, stretching out her arms. Dorothy scooped her up and spun her around, making the girl laugh in that joyful way that had been missing all week. "Hi, Princess. How are you? I missed you so much. Why did you leave? I didn't like it." "I didn't like it either, sweetheart, but sometimes grown-ups get confused and do the wrong things." Jennifer explained the situation to Dorothy and asked her to show them the exercises. For 2 hours she watched as Dorothy worked carefully with Emily, explaining each movement. "See how well she responds," Dorothy remarked. "Her muscles aren't completely atrophied. There's real potential here." Emily seemed like a completely different child during the exercises, focused, engaged, smiling. Jennifer recorded some moments on her phone, planning to show her father later. The secret only lasted 2 days. On Monday, when Jennifer came home with Emily, the girl was more excited than she'd been in weeks. Franklin noticed immediately. "Where did you two go today?" "We went into town for some shopping," Jennifer lied. But Emily, in her innocence, couldn't keep the secret. "Grandpa, Aunt Dorothy was there." She played with me again." Franklin's expression hardened. He stared at his daughter with disappointment and anger. "You disobeyed my orders." "Dad, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You took my granddaughter to see that woman behind my back." The argument that followed was intense. Franklin accused Jennifer of betrayal and irresponsibility, while she defended herself, saying she was only trying to give their daughter a chance. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. "Dad, look at her," Jennifer shouted, pointing at Emily, who watched the argument in fear. "When was the last time you saw her this excited? And when she finds out it won't work, when she gets frustrated and suffers even more, did you think about that? What if it does work? What if she can walk? Have you considered that possibility?" The argument was interrupted by something unexpected. Emily, driven by the fear of losing her friend again, began to move differently. She leaned on a nearby chair and, with great effort, tried to stand up. Everyone stopped arguing immediately. The girl trembled from the strain but managed to stay upright for a few seconds before falling back to the floor. "I want to walk for Aunt Dorothy," she said, tears in her eyes. "Please, Grandpa, I want to try." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Franklin looked at his granddaughter, then at his daughter, and finally at his own trembling hands. "Do you really believe this could work?" he asked Jennifer, his voice choked. "Dad, I saw Dorothy's daughter walking. With my own eyes, she has the same condition as Emily." Franklin sighed deeply. For the first time since firing Dorothy, he allowed himself to consider that he might have made a mistake. "All right," he said finally, "but I want to talk to this physical therapist first. I need to understand exactly what she did with Dorothy's daughter." Jennifer smiled, feeling a mix of relief and hope. The next day they all went to Dorothy's house. Franklin, Jennifer, Emily, and even Margaret, who had asked to come along. Mrs. Eleanor Johnson, the retired physical therapist, was a 71-year-old woman with completely white hair, but an impressive energy. She had worked for 40 years at a rehabilitation clinic in Wichita before retiring and moving to the countryside. "Mr. Franklin," she said after carefully examining Emily, "your granddaughter does have potential. Her muscles aren't completely atrophied and there's joint mobility. But I need to be honest, it will be hard work, possibly taking years, and I can't promise full results." "What exactly do you mean by full results?" "She may be able to stand, take a few steps, gain some independence. but she'll likely never walk perfectly like a child without limitations. It's important you understand that from the start." Franklin took in the therapist's words. They weren't impossible promises, just realistic expectations. And would it be safe? Completely safe, if done correctly. The exercises focus on muscle strengthening and joint mobility, nothing invasive or dangerous. "How much would it cost?" Mrs. Eleanor smiled. "Mr. Franklin, I'm retired. I don't need money. If you're willing to commit, I'll teach you the exercises to do at home. No charge." The woman's generosity moved the whole family. Franklin felt small in the face of such kindness from strangers who genuinely cared about his granddaughter. "Why would you do this for us?" "Because I've seen many children overcome what seemed like impossible limitations, and because life has taught me that sometimes God puts people in our path for a reason." During the following 2 weeks, Mrs. Eleanor visited the farm every day, teaching specific exercises for Emily. Dorothy was rehired, not just as a cook, but as a dedicated assistant in the girl's care. Franklin, initially reluctant, gradually joined in the exercises. He discovered that working with his granddaughter had become the most special part of his day. Seeing Emily's determination both inspired and shamed him at the same time. "Grandpa, today I felt something different in my leg," Emily commented after a particularly intense session. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Like it was waking up." These small remarks from Emily became the family's daily motivation. Jennifer began visiting the farm more often, actively participating in the exercise routine. The relationship between father and daughter, which had grown strained over the years, started to mend. Dorothy brought her daughter Olivia to play with Emily regularly. Seeing another child who had gone through the same situation uniquely motivated Emily. Olivia became a kind of mentor, always encouraging the younger girl. "When I was your age, it was hard for me too," Olivia told Emily. "But look where I am now, you'll get there too." The first milestone came 2 months after starting the exercises. Emily managed to stand on her own for almost a minute. The whole family celebrated, as if it were the greatest achievement in the world. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," Jennifer said, hugging Emily after the exercise. "I'm proud of me too," the girl replied with a smile that lit up the entire room. Franklin watched them and felt a change happening within himself. The fear of fostering false hope had given way to cautious but genuine optimism. The following months brought slow but steady progress. Emily began using furniture to move around the house. Then she took 2 steps while holding her Grandma Margaret's hands. Every small victory was celebrated like a major triumph. The farm's routine had completely changed. Mornings were dedicated to Emily's exercises. In the afternoons, she played with Olivia or helped Dorothy in the kitchen, always working on her motor skills. Evenings were for massages and stretches with Mrs. Eleanor. "I've never seen a family so united around a single goal," Mrs. Eleanor remarked one afternoon. "It makes all the difference in the rehabilitation process." Franklin had become a different man. The farm, which had once been just a business to him, was now the setting for the greatest fight of his life, giving his granddaughter the best possible chance. "You know, Jennifer," he said one afternoon, as they watched Emily playing in the yard, "I think your mother would be proud to see how we've come together for this girl." "I'm sure she would, Dad." The 6th month marked a historic achievement. Emily took 5 consecutive steps without support. Jennifer filmed the moment, crying profusely as she recorded. "See, Grandpa, I did it," Emily shouted, radiant with happiness. Franklin scooped her into his arms and spun her around, feeling like his heart might burst with pride and joy. "You sure did, my little warrior. You sure did." Dorothy watched from the kitchen door, wiping tears with her apron. Olivia stood beside her, smiling with the knowing smile of someone who understood exactly what those steps meant. "Mom, remember when I took my first steps?" "How could I forget? It was the happiest day of my life." And today is the happiest day of Emily's life. Mrs. Eleanor, who had practically become part of the family, was moved to see the results of her teachings. "In 40 years of practice, I've never seen a family so devoted," she told Franklin. "You made the difference. You're the one who made the difference, Mrs. Eleanor. We just followed your guidance." "No, Mr. Franklin, I taught exercises. You gave love, dedication, consistency. That can't be taught. The news of Emily's progress spread through the local community. Neighbors who used to just wave when passing by the farm began stopping by to meet the little girl who was defying medical expectations. Richard, a neighboring farmer, came with his wife to see Emily. "Franklin, what an inspiring story," he said. "My sister-in-law has a grandson with a similar condition. Would you mind sharing what you've learned?" Franklin looked at Mrs. Eleanor, who smiled and nodded. "Of course we don't mind. Mrs. Eleanor can guide you too." That's how a spontaneous movement began in the area. Mrs. Eleanor started helping other families, never charging a dime, always with the same dedication she had shown Emily. Franklin's farm became a gathering place for parents and children going through the same experience. Emily, who had once been a girl isolated by her limitations, was now at the center of a community built on hope and perseverance. "Grandpa, 3 new kids came today," Emily shared one afternoon. "I showed them how to do the plank exercise." "So you're a teacher now, huh?" "Grandpa, when I was sad because I couldn't walk, Olivia told me everything would be okay. Now I say the same thing to the other kids." Franklin hugged his granddaughter, amazed by the emotional maturity she had gained through this journey. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Emily's 6th birthday was approaching, and Jennifer wanted to throw a special party, not just to celebrate another year of life, but to honor everything she had achieved. "Dad, what if we have the party here at the farm and invite all the families Mrs. Eleanor has been helping?" "Great idea. We could do a backyard lunch with music, games, and we could ask everyone to share their stories. I think it would be really moving." Preparations took 2 weeks. Aunt Dorothy outdid herself in the kitchen, making classic Kansas dishes. Margaret decorated the house with colorful ornaments. Olivia helped Emily pick out the prettiest dress. On the day of the party, over 30 people showed up, families from all over the region, each with their own story of struggle and triumph. There were children at different stages of recovery, emotional parents, supportive siblings. "I never imagined our home would bring so many good people together," Franklin told Jennifer as they watched the lively backyard gathering. "Dad, just look what the determination of one little girl can do." The party was in full swing when Mrs. Eleanor asked for everyone's attention. She wanted to give a special speech. "Friends," she began, "today we're not just celebrating Emily's birthday. We're celebrating the power of love, hope, and perseverance." Everyone applauded. Emily, seated in a special chair in the middle of the yard, beamed with joy. "When I met this family 8 months ago, I saw a worried grandpa, an anxious mother, and a sad little girl. Today I see a family united, strong, and full of hope." Mrs. Eleanor asked Emily to stand. With some effort, but on her own, the little girl rose and stood tall before everyone. "And now," Mrs. Eleanor said, "Emily has a surprise for you." That's when the unthinkable happened. Emily took one step, then another, then another. Walking completely unaided, she crossed nearly 10 feet before reaching her grandpa's arms. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Before the celebration erupted, people cried, cheered, and shouted with joy. Franklin held his granddaughter in his arms, trembling with emotion. How did she do it?" he asked Mrs. Eleanor through tears. "She's been practicing in secret for the last 2 weeks. She wanted to surprise everyone at the birthday party." Jennifer filmed everything with shaky hands, barely able to hold her phone from sheer emotion. My daughter walked. The party turned into an unforgettable celebration. Every person there knew they were witnessing something special, a moment that would stay with them forever. Dorothy and Olivia cried in each other's arms. They understood better than anyone what those steps meant. "Mom, Emily did it," Olivia whispered. "Just like I did." "She did, my girl, and she'll do so much more." Margaret, who had cared for the little girl since she was a baby, couldn't stop crying. "Mr. Franklin, in 15 years working here, I've never seen anything so beautiful." "Margaret, you're part of this victory. Without you, none of this would have been possible." The party lasted until late afternoon, with stories being shared, experiences exchanged, and bonds strengthened. Emily, tired but radiant, walked from one person to another, always with an adult nearby for safety, but walking. When everyone had left, the family gathered on the porch for a quiet moment. "Dad," Jennifer said, "remember when you asked me what we had to lose by trying?" "I remember. We found out what we'd lose by not trying." Franklin nodded, watching Emily play on the floor with dolls, moving with a freedom that once seemed impossible. "You know what I've learned through all this," he said. "I learned that sometimes we're so afraid of getting hurt that we miss the chance to be happy. And did you learn anything else?" "I learned you should never give up on someone you love." In the months that followed, life on the farm kept changing. Emily progressed to longer walks, started running, though slowly, and developed an independence that completely transformed her personality. Mrs. Eleanor set up a small rehabilitation center in the space Franklin provided on the farm. She didn't charge families, but accepted donations to keep the place running. Dorothy was promoted to center coordinator, working directly with the children. Olivia became a kind of ambassador, visiting schools in the area to talk about inclusion and overcoming challenges. Jennifer decided to move from Washington, D.C. to the farm, taking over the center's administrative management. Being close to her daughter and father rebuilt family ties that had faded over the years. "Dad, thank you," she said one afternoon as they watched Emily play with other children in the yard. "For what?" "For letting me make mistakes, for changing your mind, for giving hope a chance. Jennifer, you're the ones who gave me a chance. I was becoming a bitter old man, afraid of everything. You brought me back to life." A year after Emily's first steps, the center was regularly helping 15 children. The transformations weren't just physical, they were emotional and social too. Families who once felt isolated now belonged to a strong, supportive community. Emily, now 7, walked around the farm with ease. She still had some limitations, still needed special care, but she had gained an independence that seemed impossible 2 years earlier. "Grandpa," she said one afternoon, "do you still remember when I couldn't walk?" "I do, sweetheart. Why?" "Sometimes it feels like a bad dream, like it never really happened. But it did happen, Emily. And it was good that it did." "How could it be good?" "Because that's what taught us to cherish every step you take, every smile, every achievement." The little girl thought for a few seconds before answering. "Then it really was good. Because now I know I'm a warrior." "That's right, my warrior. That's exactly right." Emily's story spread far beyond the region. A newspaper in Wichita ran a feature on the rehabilitation center at the farm. A television station filmed a short documentary about the family. But for Franklin, Jennifer, Dorothy, Mrs. Eleanor, and especially for Emily, the most important thing wasn't the attention. It was the certainty that they had transformed not just one life, but an entire community. "Do you know the most beautiful part of this whole story?" Mrs. Eleanor asked Franklin one afternoon. "What?" "It's that you didn't just save Emily, you saved yourselves too. And you saved all those other families who came after." Franklin looked around, children playing in the yard, parents chatting animatedly, Dorothy teaching exercises, Olivia telling stories, Jennifer organizing activities, Margaret serving snacks for everyone. "Mrs. Eleanor, when I fired Dorothy that day, I thought I was protecting my granddaughter." "And you were, in the way you knew how at the time. But I almost missed the chance to see her walk. But you didn't. And do you know why? Because true love always finds a way." 2 years later, Emily started attending the local public school. She walked to the bus stop every day, carrying her pink backpack, smiling at the world as if each day were a new adventure. The transformation was complete. The girl who once seemed destined for a life of limitations now ran, played, studied, and dreamed like any other child her age. At 65, Franklin had discovered a new purpose. The rehabilitation center became his main focus, far more rewarding than cattle farming had ever been. Jennifer built a house next to the farm and settled into her new life in the countryside. She found a simple happiness she'd never experienced in the capital. Dorothy became a recognized specialist in pediatric rehabilitation exercises, even without formal academic training. Her hands-on experience and special sensitivity with children were worth more than any diploma. Olivia, now a teenager, decided she wanted to study physical therapy to continue her mother's and Mrs. Eleanor's work on a broader scale. Mrs. Eleanor, at 74, remained active and determined, always discovering new methods and techniques to help the children. And Margaret stayed as the foundation, holding everything together, caring for everyone with the tenderness of a devoted grandma. "Grandpa," Emily said one afternoon, just before turning 9, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Do you think if I'd always been able to walk, our family would be as close as we are now?" The question took Franklin by surprise. He thought for a long moment before answering. "You know, Emily, I think sometimes God allows hard things to happen because He knows we're stronger than we realize. And did He know we'd make me walk? He knew we'd try. And He knew that by trying, we'd discover things about ourselves we never imagined." "What kind of things?" "That love can move mountains, that we should never give up on the people we love, and that sometimes the most special people come into our lives in ways we don't expect." Emily smiled and ran off to play with her friends. Franklin watched her running freely across the yard and felt his heart overflow with gratitude, not just for his granddaughter's recovery, but for the entire journey that had transformed them into a stronger, closer family, more aware of the value of every moment together. The farm, once quiet and melancholic, now echoed with children's laughter, lively adult conversations, and the music of life being lived to the fullest. And at the center of it all was a girl who had proven that no limitations can overcome determination, fueled by love. The end of the story. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story and where you're watching from. Emily really managed to surpass all expectations, didn't she? Leave a comment sharing if you know any similar stories or if you've ever been through a similar situation. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.